I'm here today to do my April reading wrap up. I was able to read 9 books, and that does sound like a lot, but I have to confess a little bit. I'm in the process of reading Claire Shadowhunter Academy series, which I got a free arc from Edelweiss. So I've been counting like those as like individual books just because when I started it, I didn't have the book. So I was reading them. So like I've been grouping them together. So like my 9 books includes like 6 of those stories. So like every 2 or every 3 I count as like 1 book. So that's kind of how I've been counting it. But I'm going to tell you guys what I thought about them all. They're all really great. If you're a big fan of Cassandra Clare, I'm going to do a whole video review when I'm done. Hopefully at the end of next month, I should be able to complete them. And then I'll be able to finally move on to Lady Midnight. But I was able to read 9 things. I've done a lot of listening, but it hasn't been in the audiobook variety. And I'll explain to that as I get farther into my video. But the first 2 things that I read was Evil We Love and Nothing But Shadows, and those are the next 2 stories in the Shadowhunter Academy series. I really like them. I give them both between 3 and 4 stars. The books that focus really on Simon, I really, really like, and I know that there are some stories that focus on other characters that are going to be very, very important in Lady Midnight. But the stories that focus on Simon, as I'll talk about a little later, I really, really enjoy. And especially when you get to see characters from the Mortal Instrument series, those books I adore. So those 2 stories I gave between 3 and 4 stars. If you haven't read this series, I highly recommend it. Especially if your favorite character is Simon, which he was mine in the Mortal Instrument series. Really, really read it. But again, I'll talk a little bit more about that when I do my non-spoiler review. And then the next thing that I read was The Beautiful and the Cursed by Paige Morgan. This is what it looks like. These covers, by the way, are simply gorgeous. I love this cover. And this book I gave 4 stars. It's about this girl named Ingrid, and her mom escape from London after something happens, and they go to Paris, and her twin brother was sent ahead, and when they get there, the twin brother is missing, and they can't find him, and it gets them sucked into this mystical, fantastical world of all these stories and mystical creatures, and it is really, really cool. I really, really love this story, and I'm going to do a full series review once I finish Wondrous and the Wicked, which is hopefully will be next month. But overall, I really, really like this story. I did, earlier in the year, I read the Something Strange and Lovely series by Susan Dennard, and I had a very, very big problem with her main character. I thought that she was a little bit too, just not as warm, but I love the character of Ingrid. She's not only strong, but she's also just a really, really cool main character to follow, and I really, really enjoyed her. I really, really love the character. It was a very, very fast pace. The world building is spectacular. The world building in these 2 books was just so good. The plot was a little bit predictable, and nothing really wowed me. It was unique and it was different, but it wasn't anything that super wowed me. So that's why I only gave it like 4 stars. But overall, I really, really liked it, and I was very excited to read the next book in the series. And then the next thing that I read, was Bitter Tongue, Fiery Trial, and Born into Endless Night, and those are the next novellas in the Shadowhunter Academy series. I think my favorite was The Fiery Trial because you really got to focus on Clary and Simon's relationship, and if you like Clary and Simon, I highly recommend you read that story because I loved it. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but it went exactly the way that I wanted it to go, and I haven't read Lady Midnight yet, but I'm hopeful that maybe we'll get to see elements of that in the next book. So I really, really love that. The other two, I think the one I liked the least so far was Pale Princes and Kings. I know it has a lot to do with Lady Midnight, but right now I'm just not there. I'm really focused on Simon. When I get to Lady Midnight, I'm sure I'll really, really understand why it was so important. But right now my favorite was Fiery Trial. And the next thing I read was Lovely and the Lost by Paige Morgan. Sorry, my book got ripped. My backpack attacked it. Very, very sad. But I really, really like this book as well. I gave it 4 stars. It was great. I love the character growth. Was amazing. There was a lot that happened with her sister in this book, Gabby, that I really liked, and a lot that happened with Ingrid's brother as well. It was a little bit predictable, but it was a very, very fast-paced read. But yeah, I overall really, really enjoyed it, and I'm so excited to read Wondrous and the Wicked. If I have my way, I'll be reading it next month. As well. And then the next book that I read was One of the Murphys. Sorry, I keep saying this title right. It's One for the Murphys. But I really like this book. I found this book like on my digital downloads for my library, and it's about this girl named Carly who was living with her mother in Las Vegas, and there's a big accident and something happens, and she's put in the foster care system, and she winds up staying with this family, the Murphys. And it's just a it's just a very very quick story. Like it's like not even 300 pages, but I really really liked it, and it was like one of those stories that really really punched me in the emotions. Like I was near tears towards the end of the story because it was one of those books that really packs you in the punches. If you like the TV show The Fosters, I highly recommend this book because it's very very realistic, very very realistic, and I really really enjoyed it. It did not end the way I wanted it to end, but that's just because like I wanted it to go away, but I think it ended in a very very realistic way. But it was so short. That's why I only gave it 4 stars. I wanted more. I wanted more information. I wanted to know what happened after. And we just didn't really get that. So it was a very very quick read. But I really did like it. And as I said, it was a really really big story that really really punched you in the emotions. And if you want to read like that, I highly recommend you check it out. But yeah, it was a very very good read. Very very fast paced, and it dealt with like, you know, foster care and adoptions and family relationships and stuff that just I don't think a lot of books really really deal with. So I think if you like stuff like that, especially if you like the TV show The Fosters that has a very very similar theme, just grounded in reality, I think that you'd like it as well. And then the next thing that I read is The Glittering Court by Rochelle. I just completed my non-spoiler review, and this was included with the Paper Princess novel, which I have read next, so I will, that's the video right before this, I think. But I really like this, I enjoyed this book. I gave this book 3 stars, and I talked about this a little bit in my wrap-up, but, it was not what I was expecting from Rochelle Mead. It was not more like the Vampire Academy with supernatural stuff and more like the Selection that Kira Cass wrote. And I just really like Rochelle Mead when her world building involves mystical stuff because I think she does it spectacularly. Read 3 books, Soundless by her, the Vampire Academy series, and the Bloodline series. They all had a lot of like mystical and fantasy stuff, and I just love her world building like this. So this book just felt like it was like missing something, and I think it was the mystical stuff. And the character that for this book followed just I wasn't as easily captured. I normally love Rochelle Mead's protagonist, and this book just wasn't my favorite. I like had a little bit of an issue getting into it and following it and really really loving the characters. But this book is kind of unique because it's like a standalone, and then there's other companion books in the series. But if you want more information about that, check out my non-spoiler review where I talk a little bit more in detail. I did like it. I gave it 3 stars, and I will be reading the other books in the series. Just maybe don't buy them, maybe borrow them or rent them. And then, as related to that video, I also then read Paper Princess by Erin. If you want more information about this book, go check out that non-spoiler mashup review. But I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is the first book in a series called The Royals, and it follows this girl named Ella, and she kind of gets twisted up in this world of the royals because her father, who she's never met, was the best friend of the royals' dad, and she kind of becomes stuck in it because her mom died of cancer. This book is a lot of dramatics and a lot of romantic entanglements, and it is the boys in this book really may make your blood boil, but if you like stuff like that, I recommend you read it. The book was like the plot was great, the world building was great. I love the main character of Ella, but the romance that develops in this book really made my blood boil, and I was not happy with it throughout the entire novel. I think that really like colored the way that I saw this novel. Talked a lot about it in my non-spoiler mashup review and just like what I thought about it. But I think that really did color how I viewed this book. So, and at the end of the book, it left it on such a cliffhanger that I have to read Broken Prince that comes out in July, so I'll definitely be reading that then. But it was one of those books that I just was not in love with the romance that developed, and I think that really colored how I viewed a lot of things. But there was, like, the world building was great, the characters, the plot, well, most of the characters. But the romance just really, like, made me not as fond of the story, and I know the next book is called Broken Prince, so I'm hopeful we'll get a little bit more information, and maybe the boys' behaviors will make a little bit more sense to me, but right now, I am not a big fan of that character. Um, and then I feel like I've been reading this book for months, and I have, because according to Goodreads, I started reading this February 1st. I finally finished reading Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. In my defense, this book is so big with such its cool illustrations that I really couldn't bring it anywhere, so I would read it at home. And in addition to that, I'm doing a rereading it, so I'm like rereading a few chapters, and then I'm listening to the Alo Amorha podcast that MuggleNet has. So like you read, and then they all came out after the book, so it's like, spoiler discussion, what we think happened, what our thoughts are now. So as I got closer to the end of the book, I would say around chapter like 6, I just started listening to them so repeatedly. So that's why I didn't listen to a lot of like book stuff, because I was listening to the podcasts. But I hope to listen to more audiobooks and get some stuff done, because I do have one that I really, really need to finish. But as always, I love the Harry Potter series. It is one of my favorite series of all time. I will say that. I really, really love this. And the re-listening experience with Aloha Mora is amazing. It was great. I'm definitely going to pre-order Chamber of Secrets when it comes out in October. But it was just so great re-listening to it and then hearing people's thoughts. I even had a couple of theories myself, which is so rare. Like 10 books after a book comes out, the series is completed, but I really loved it. So I cannot wait to do that for Chamber of Secrets, and I'm hopefully going to start that next month. And then the last book that I completed reading in April was Miss Mayhem by Rachel. So, the next book I read was Miss Mayhem by Rachel Hawkins. And I was very hesitant to read this book because a lot of the book bloggers I follow kept saying this book was not amazing. And I did enjoy Rebel Belle. It wasn't my favorite book, but I did like it. So I said, you know what? Lady Renegades just came out, so why not? I picked it up and I liked it. It was a very, very fast-paced read. It was a little bit predictable and it wasn't as unique. And the character of Harper went into that like superhuman trope I always say, where like everything worked out perfectly, and it just wasn't as perfect. But I did like the relationship that developed between, or the progression of the relationship between Harper and David. I thought it was very, very interesting and unique. But there was a lot of like plot points that just like were happening, and then they just dropped off midway through the novel, and that like made my enjoyment of it a little bit less, just because I felt like it was, there's like, if it's a trilogy, there's like a second book and it's not always needed. That's kind of how I felt this book was. I'll tell you guys my honest opinions when I get to Lady Renegade. Hopefully maybe in June I'll read that. And I might try to listen to it, but we'll see. But overall, I liked it. If you liked Rebel Belle, I would recommend you read it just so you can get to Lady Renegade and finish it. The characters are unique and it's a unique premise. The world building is actually really, really cool. And there's a bunch of different characters, but there's a lot of like Buffy related stuff in here where like parents are just totally oblivious, which I'm actually doing a rewatch of Buffy right now. So it kind of clicked like a few more little things, but I did like it. And then after that, I started reading A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Cavallaro, and this is a Sherlock Holmes and Watson retelling, and it takes place in a Connecticut prep school. I'm only about 100 pages in, and I like it so far. But it's one of those books that you need to read in quick succession, so hopefully I will be able to get to that soon and complete it and give you guys my thoughts next month. Those are all the books that I read in April, and I'm about to do my May TBR, so keep a nose out. I'll talk to you guys later.